Welcome to the first part of a doubleheader. Today, Security Saturday. It just kind of turned out that way. I've been putting off the security AMA for a while now. A lot of times due to lack of attendance, but I don't know. I think I have enough content where I don't really need a lot of questions. But again, if you all want to ask questions, go for it. Of course, always keep it AMA. But yeah, this is the first of the doubleheader. I got security AMA, this one, and then about 45 minutes or so, we'll switch to 100% uptime, a very popular show on RHMax channel. Oh, security. That's something that a lot of you, if you've heard me talk about it before, I have a professional background in it. A lot of my work has been in figuring out how to attack different products and websites and stuff, for companies I work for, and then how to defend them, how to write secure products or make secure products, write secure code, do all that stuff like that. So what's up, Furu? Appreciate you coming, man. So that's where I want to try to dovetail that experience into some of the crypto stuff, because a lot of the crypto websites, and I'm not going to be talking about Web3 attacks very much today, although they come across a couple good articles on those as well, which could be relevant for a future stream. But a lot of the attacks that happen, Capital One got hacked. Just all kinds of different companies have got hacked by just misconfigurations in their cloud resources or S3 buckets. I know maybe a lot of those words don't make sense to you. It's a bunch of nomenclature for cloud security stuff. But I think it's interesting to kind of go through how these attacks, if you were going to hack a website, how it actually works, how this happens in the real world. So we're going to go through a little bit of that. And let's see, I'm going to share. Let me share the browser, and we'll start with I'll put the link in here as well. You can follow along. I got a bunch of content on my website if you all aren't familiar with my blog. That's where I write a lot of the security content and crypto content and stuff like that. So check that out if you all want to. But I'm going to throw that up here. Let me present. Share screen. Window. So cloud security in a crypto world. So this is something I wrote earlier this past year. And the cloud is where you launch and scale products these days. It's just someone else's computer, as Richard likes to talk about, but it is where a lot of this stuff happens that allows you to get this stuff out to the public, how to build products and make sure you can scale EC2 instances, which are just virtual machines that you can deploy for web servers and web services and stuff like that. S3 is where file sharing, where you can upload files to Amazon basically, and share them with either reference them in your website, or you can build entire websites and platforms and stuff just off using S3 and static files. So that's where you put your files, your images. They come with a whole bunch of different configuration and permissions and stuff like that, which is one of the things that goes wrong when you're setting this stuff up and gets websites hacked. But before we get into the cloud portion, because there's a whole bunch of interesting stuff there, just quickly, I've built websites from scratch. Many of them I built very secure ones. I built ones that are meant to be very secure, and I built tools that build websites that are meant to be secure. So the number one thing when you're looking at the security of a website, and the number one thing that attackers are doing when they go out and look for websites to exploit, maybe they're targeting a particular one, or maybe they're just targeting a whole bunch of different websites with a particular misconfiguration or vulnerability or out of date version that is vulnerable to certain attacks, stuff like that. They're doing recon. They're trying to find all the resources the website's using. Is it using the cloud? Is it using some other data center? Is it hosted, locally, or in some, is it hosted, by WordPress, by some other provider that's hosting all kinds of different customer instances and customer websites and stuff. So that's the first thing, a fingerprint, identify the technology versions, servers, people, if they are going to initiate a phishing attack, maybe they start prioritizing and coming up with a list of people that they would come up with an email that looks like it's coming from a place that but it's really coming from an attacker who registered some domain that looks very close to the one that you think you're getting an email from, or they're just spoofing in other ways too. But really, when you click on the link to reset your password, you're going to the attacker's website, and now you insert your email address and password, and now they get your password because it's like, oh, insert your old password, and it sends it to their website instead of you thought you were going to a legit website to reset the stuff. That's how some of the phishing attacks work. So they either send you to a fake website, and there's all kinds of different ways to make that fake website look really real to the user, or they can just put a link that is like an executable, exe file. Most people run Windows. You shouldn't do that. If you saw these security AMAs before, I've always been telling people run Mac, run Linux, run anything but Windows, and you'll be in the 1% of people who are targeted for malware. You'll be in the 1% of successful phishing attacks if you just don't run the thing that everyone knows how to write malware for, which is Windows. So use a Mac if you can. They're beautiful. They're elegant. Not a huge learning curve. I love Macs a lot, and of course Linux if you want to go to that level as well. So back to recon, they do reconnaissance. They do recon, figure out what they're working with and what they may take advantage of. So they start looking for misconfigurations. That may be weak passwords. There may be an admin portal somewhere that they can guess the password to, or it's the default password that wasn't changed if it's different stuff. A lot of these things are dependent on the provider and the services and what the website's actually hosted on and using, whether it's custom code or hosted at WordPress.com, different stuff like that. But a lot of these things happen. A lot of the big hacks you see in the news happen just over simple misconfigurations. So we'll go back to the cloud attacks. And the first one is just about separation of privilege. Don't use the root account. That's kind of like, okay, if you accidentally leak the root password or root key and stuff like that, they have access to everything. But if you create an IAM user, which is just like a user account, an unprivileged account that can only do certain things separate from the major account, the super user account, the root account. If you only use user accounts and very sparingly use the root account, or just never use it unless you need it for billing or whatever else, that way, so if you get compromised in some way, they only have access to that user account stuff. They only have access to certain things, not the entire account. So that's kind of a separation of privilege type thing for cloud security, and that pretty much applies to every other. On your computer, you don't want to run as admin on Windows either, because you run that exe as admin, they have access to everything. You run it as your user account, now they have to escalate to admin, which they need another bug to do, or they need you to click another button. It just makes it harder for them to successfully compromise you on Windows, for example, if you're running as a user account instead of as admin. So you may have heard that before. Don't run things as admin unless you absolutely have to. And especially, don't be running your computer as an admin account. Don't be browsing websites as admin. Thankfully, that's harder to do these days because of Windows security improvements, but people can still make it happen. So the S3 permissions, that's going back to a lot of the hacks you see these days. The misconfigurations for buckets. So when you create an S3 bucket, it's kind of like a folder, kind of a place where you store objects, and objects can be files, that can be just different blobs of data, that can be just all kinds of different stuff. And that's where it gets tricky, because you can make them public, you can make them private, you can make them authenticated users only, which is this whole big trying to never use that, because I don't know what it's even for these days. It basically means public, but with a S3 account, or with an AWS account, which is basically public, because anyone can register an AWS account and get access to stuff like that. So make sure when you use an S3, unless you're literally just using S3 for a static website or file downloads or something like that, that it is not public, marked with a public ACL or authenticated users, something like that. It's always locked down permissions to either other users, or only your AWS resources can access it, stuff like that. So least permissive possible. And then of course you can encrypt the S3 data where it makes sense. It doesn't always, it's not like always encrypt stuff with S3. There's different nuances with that, but encryption at rest can help with a lot of these things too. The other thing is a bug that happens a lot is hard coding credentials in your code. So, especially in cloud services, you can use, instead of putting, you want to run a script, you have some script you want it to run, and you need it to pass credentials to another service. The easiest thing in the world to do is in the code, put that in the code. That's also the least secure way of doing it too. So you could even get on GitHub and you can go through examples of, you can probably get on GitHub right now and just search for, actually, I might bring that up. I might do a code search and just show you some of this stuff. Because a lot of the, also debuting new mug right here, RHM mug, RHM swag right there. Let's see if you can see it. Let me switch the screen over. There we go. New merch. Maybe I'll be giving away at some point. New cup merch right there. Boom. You saw it first. You saw it first today. Let me do a code search to see if this even make more sense. What is the website? It's like search code. Google. And then there's a new website that does some of this stuff. Go away. Search code. That the new website I saw that does this? Okay, I think so, yeah. So it indexes all these different code across all these resources. So let's just do something like, I don't know, password equals. Yeah, here you go. There's now a lot of these aren't going to be valid. They're not going to be like, they're going to be expired or something like that. But if you just go to like searchcode.com, you can see people hard coding passwords into code, or uploading their config file, which has passwords in it, usernames and passwords into it, on GitHub and public resources on Bitbucket too. So password, like, this is like very simple stuff you can that happens a lot. Now, if you went and tried to use any of these, which I don't recommend anyone do, this is just educational purposes. But if you went and tried to, a lot of these are going to be expired, they're not going to be useful or things like that. But it is this is the demonstrated example of how these things can happen. So you can do that. You can do like API key equals, let's see. You may see people hard coding API stuff. API, I don't know, like V2. By the way, if you have any questions on anything I'm talking about, just post them in the chat and I'll get to them. Let's see. I'm trying to give you some examples for, I don't know, you can even do like on the Amazon stuff, you could do like secret key or access key. Secret key equals, this is your AWS key pairs for stuff. So yeah, you see people here, they're obfuscating it. They're like just doing this as a sample, but a lot of people hard code those in, and you can find them. And then this gives you access to cloud resources. There's some stuff right there. Again, these are hopefully they're expired and stuff, but that's basically the username and password you can find publicly for a whole bunch of different stuff. I just showed you in 5 minutes like how you can find mistakes on the internet for people hard coding usernames and passwords in stuff that they put online. So yes, GIF API, I love them. Yes, we love APIs. GIF. Let's see. So that's just an example of hard-coded passwords. Probably the most exciting one. You can like go online and just find some, just using examples of like what not to do. Again, educational purposes only. MFA, that's another thing too. If you're using username and password, that means that anyone who can go, anytime it gets leaked or whatever, that's it. Like that's username and password. It gets out there. Anyone can use it now. So if you turn on MFA and don't use text, don't use text MFA or 2FA. It's the same thing. 2FA, MFA is multi-factor. 2FA is two-factor. Multi-factor includes two-factor. It could be three-factor, four-factor, all that stuff. So when I say 2FA, MFA, they're basically synonymous. Don't use text MFA stuff because there's SIM swap attacks and all that stuff. But if you use like Google Authenticator or you use Okta, use other type of one-time password type stuff, those are usually pretty good and are harder to be. there's still ways to phish those. Show you guys some deep stuff today. Evilgenics 2. Yeah, so this is actually a man-in-the-middle framework that can be used for phishing credentials, and also you can bypass 2FA with different supported stuff. So again, there's attacks against MFA type stuff too, and this is one way to do phishing and very advanced phishing techniques to try to get past some of this stuff. So these are tools that like security professionals use to test their own organizations. So these are not strictly hacker tools. Like, of course, you can use the tools for good or bad. But these are stuff that security professionals use to, if they work for a company, they're using these tools to try to, attack their own company to help defend it, and like to prove, either prove that something is vulnerable, or prove that it's not. Say, hey, I tried using all these frameworks to do phishing, and our security is so good, we're protected against phishing. That's you probably never say that, because phishing is like the one thing you're basically not going to be protected against. It's very hard. It's very hard. It's one of those very hard social problems to make it hard not to click something you shouldn't click and stuff. But anyways, these are tools that you can use to test these things yourself and your own organization. So they're not. That's one thing I like about the security industry is we're very transparent and very open. Nobody's trying to hide all these techniques and stuff. Like, no, let's put them out in the wild. Let's put them all out there so the defenders can figure out how the attackers work, and they can build better defenses. And the attackers, so if everything is out in the open, the defenders have the data, the attackers have the data. All right, it's up to the defenders. Now they have all the data they need to go protect against these attacks, or not. But they have the opportunity, so we can study these types of things. And it also enables people who are testing their own organization for these types of bugs to have access to the quality tools that the attackers themselves have access to test for these things. So what's up, UFO to go? Appreciate it, man. Appreciate it. Re-entity attacks. Yeah, that's some of the Web3 stuff. I may do a stream on that sometime. We're covering more of just the like the native attacks outside of Web3 right now, but re-entity is one of the most common Web3 attacks. But right now we're doing more cloud security. But yeah, actually, I think I might do a stream so this is kind of a 2-part deal too. This one I want to do how to hack crypto websites, and then the next one I want to do how to hack crypto users. So this is focused on server-side attacks mostly. I'm gonna do a VPN segment here though too, because I found a really good website that has a very good explanation of why you shouldn't use VPNs, retail, and all that stuff, which is near and dear to my heart. So I want to go over that for a minute too. But I'm keeping this one focused on server-side attacks, and then the next one I'm going to show you how crypto users get hacked. And again, this is all not to show people how to hack other people, but it shows you how these attacks happen, so then you can defend yourself better. Because you don't know how to defend yourself unless you know how these attacks works. Anyone can say, oh, websites get hacked, crypto things get hacked, all this stuff. Well, that's not very useful unless you know exactly how it happens. So then you can invert it, right? You can say, okay, how do I not want my server to get hacked? How do I not want my website to get hacked? What are the things that happen that are able to get crypto users hacked? Now you know exactly what not to do. You know exactly how to defend yourself. So that's the whole point of going over this, is showing you some of the tools and techniques that attackers use, so yeah, you can better defend yourself. MFA, very important, not text-based. Use the OTP apps and stuff. Use frameworks. A lot of custom code is, especially if you're going Stack Overflow and you're just copy and pasting code. Be very careful with that if you're putting on the internet for people to play with, because input validation is the hardest thing to get right. And that's where a lot of the attacks come from, is, typing your username and password. Okay. Now you go the back end, you're parsing the username and password. Well, what if the username contains some special character? Is it going to crash your backend? Is it going to crash your script? Is it going to crash your database? Is it going to inject in your database? Like all those things you have to, for that example in particular, you say, okay, what does a username look like? Is it alphanumeric? Is it only letters and numbers? Do I expect it to also be an email address? Okay. I'm going to say, unless you give me something that looks exactly like an email address, alphanumeric characters, @ alphanumeric characters, $, and then .extension that's valid. Unless you give me exactly that, I'm going to give you an error. I'm going to say, nope, sorry, I'm not going to take the input. It doesn't look right to me. So in that way, you make sure the data you're expecting is in the exact format that you want it to be in. And you don't have to worry about a lot of these injection attacks, because injection attacks, the number one way websites, crypto websites too, get hacked are some sort of injection attack or some sort of misconfiguration or DNS attack and stuff. And I'll talk about that in a minute. So if you just set up input validation to say, I'm only going to accept valid looking email addresses, and you put that in the code, I'm only going to accept, alphanumeric characters plus whatever my password expectations are. Then when they log in with username and password, no, you don't have to worry about injection attacks if you follow those kind of strict validation rules. If it goes self-check contracts, RIFE, DeFi. Yeah, there's a lot of smart contract stuff too that I write about in the blog as well. I'll cover some of the Web3 attacks, but I don't want to go too much into smart contract exploitation. I'm not an expert in that. I did a bunch of research and figured out how to protect myself against it, and want to share that with people on the blog. But I wouldn't call myself an expert in that particular area. But yeah, definitely next time we'll do some Web3 stuff. Let's see, would you like your take on this exploit? Calculations. Yeah, you'll have to send me a link, UFO to go. Send me a link, and I'll have something to study for when I come up with the next one too. Container risks. Yeah, if anyone's ever used containers, they are awesome, and they make things much easier in a lot of ways. They're kind of advanced for scaling solutions for stuff, but developers use them to quickly test stuff. They use them for scaling stuff. They use them for packaging up, like a mini operating system with all the tools and stuff you need and distributing it. So, but there's a lot of security stuff to do for those as well. You can even hard code, there's been bugs where people have hard coded API keys and secrets and passwords and stuff like that. AWS credentials, again, as I showed you here. As you can see, it was this one. Yeah. They're trying to look at a bucket. They're trying to authenticate to it there. Here's another one, trying to upload files. Like I said, there's all kinds of leaked usernames and passwords, whether they're still valid or not. Maybe this is old code. Maybe it's from 5 years ago. But actually this one, I like it. This is just an example. You get it? Your access key, your secret key. Yeah, so that was not a leaked one. That's just an example. But there was one above that looked like a legit one. Let's see. Yep, that looks pretty. That looks like they're trying to access a S3 bucket named John Smith with this. And anyways, that's what it looks like in code. That's what these particular things look like. So yeah, sanitize input. That's what I went over. If you're expecting a search query, make it, and a search query should only be alphanumeric, should only be characters and numbers. Put that in your code. Say anything else, that's not valid. You don't have to worry about injection attacks if you do stuff like that. Yeah, use keys. Just a general rule, try to use keys instead of passwords. Passwords can be lost. You can paste a password. It's very easy to hard code and stuff like that. Keys, you kind of need to lose the file, and there's a lot less times you could be pasting it, copy and pasting it places. And there's other, benefits to it too. So when you're generating, these SSH keys, which are these remote login credentials, essentially to go access the server that you're talking to, there's a bunch of security stuff around that. And, anyways, read this at your leisure. I don't want to be verbose on every single thing. Turn on logging. That's another thing. You can detect a lot of attacks by turning on logging. You can pay extra for certain services that'll analyze logs for you and tell you if they see attacks, stuff like that. And this is like what every company does ever. I think, but just on compliance, if nothing else, they're supposed to have regular, regular tests, regular security tests, regular people coming in, outside parties, consultants trying to break their security and tell them how they broke it if they get into stuff. So just having regular security testing is something that can help do a lot of that. That can be at the network layer. It can be at the code layer. There's different tools that can help with this. I reference here, but you definitely need to have these different security audits. I guess security audit's kind of the general term for all this stuff. Yes, sir. So I just want to cover one more thing. I'll cover the DNS portion because I think that's interesting. So that is in Malicious smart contracts, my premier post. I have being vigilant with smart contract, being vigilant with free claims, which talks about some of this stuff, and then malicious smart contracts, which a lot of people have referenced and learned a lot from. I think got a lot of compliments on this one because it was very thorough and telling you exactly how to look for a lot of these different attacks. The one I wanted to talk about in this one was, let's see, DNS. Yeah. So the DNS hijacking one. That's something Curve Finance, if you all remember curve.fi, that's something that happened through there and made me add this to here because a lot of this is protecting yourself against smart contracts. But this particular one, I thought it was so impactful, so interesting that I had to add a front end compromise, even though it's kind of on the server side, kind of on the DNS side. It's not really on the client side. It does affect some of this. There's some crossover. There's some crossover. So that's another thing to make sure is nobody has control of your DNS settings. Like whatever admin panel you use, whether it's Route 53 with AWS or the Plex, and there's a whole bunch of different portals and ways to do admin stuff with your DNS settings and some of your just website type settings. Make sure those are secure. If someone gets access to them, they can redirect people to the attacking server and away from your website, which is speculate. That's one of the things that happened during the CurveFi hack, and that can cause a lot of problems. Yeah, the CurveFi hack appears to be an attack DNS poisoning records and making the website point to malicious website clone, where users then interact with the malicious DApp. Now, how could you save yourself even if you went to a malicious website and they presented malicious DApp? Before you go to a website that you're not sure about, go figure out what the smart contract, or keep a list of all the smart contracts addresses that are supposed to be the official ones. And when you go to that website and MetaMask does the prompt, it's like, hey, do you want to interact with this stuff? Compare the two, look at the two and see if they're the same. If they're not the same, that means you're not talking to the contract that is the official one. If you're not talking to the official contract, be very suspicious. Just stop what you're doing at that point because you're probably talking to a malicious one. So that's one way you can protect yourself, even if the website gets hacked. You don't have to click the button, approve, talk to the contract, take my money. You don't have to click that button in MetaMask if you can see that it's not the legit contract by comparing the one on Etherscan, the official resource, whatever, with one being prompted. And I think I go over that somewhere here too. You can compare which one. God, the freaking Uniswap exploit crap Richard was talking about today too. Anyways, you can see that, what you're interacting with in the MetaMask prompt. I guess I don't have a picture of it, but you've seen it. You can see it on the top there, what you're interacting with. Okay, and the last one, VPN alternatives. So let me just bring this up. This is a good article. So I've talked about before why buying a retail VPN doesn't make sense to me. I've never had the urge to buy retail VPN. I've only used VPNs for either traveling, where I need to, censorship resistance. Like I need to look like I can come from somewhere else to, maybe I'm in a country that's, has certain stuff locked down and I want to, watch Netflix or whatever it is. Use a VPN for that. I've used a VPN to connect to a corporate network. So, you connect your computer via VPN to a corporate network. And now it's as if your computer is sitting there at the office. You connect to the network, you have access to network resources, secure tunnel, all that good stuff. So if you buy a retail VPN, NordVPN, whatever, all that stuff, I'm not picking them out in particular, but that's one of the more popular ones. The only reason I could think you would want the only feature they provide that's of any real value, in my opinion, I mean, and I'm being generous, is it changes your IP address. It gives you nice little buttons to click to change your IP, and maybe they have like fast VPN servers and stuff like that. But otherwise, why don't you use a proxy server? And I'll show you like all the free proxy servers you can use. Why don't you use Tor? I know Tor is slow. I guess that's the reason a lot of people don't use it. But like, why don't you do stuff like that? Why are you paying, $10, $20, $30 a month for a VPN? I don't currently understand it. Again, being a security professional, I don't understand why anyone would do that. And I thought this article went through it pretty well. And there's some kind of proxy product here too, but like they just go through, okay, pros, encrypted connection to servers. Honestly, it doesn't really matter that much, the encrypted connection. If you use an I mean, like the encrypted connection VPN servers use, that's like, you're not getting much more out of that than what you're using, just using HTTPS, which is what every site uses these days since the Snowden revelations of 2010 or 2011. So the whole secure tunnel thing, you already have a secure tunnel when you're talking to a website directly. When you're using HTTPS, it's already there. So VPNs aren't like giving you this huge leg up over that. And then cons, let's see. Yeah, they're owned by private companies. A lot of times they say, oh, there's no logs and, all this stuff. That you're giving them your data in a lot of ways. You're letting them look at a lot of stuff websites you're going to and stuff. So if you want to trust some VPN company with that, and now if they get hacked, there goes your data too. So what else they talk about? Yeah, there we go. Malware and phishing attacks are likely inordinately greater threats to security. That's what I've said a million times. You're not going to get hacked by showing your IP address to another computer or another person. You're going to get hacked by out-of-date browser, by clicking on some phishing link with malware, giving your password to someone, blah, 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 all that stuff. VPNs are not protecting you against the things that are going to get you hacked the most. Yeah, I love the way they put it here. They really talk about it. Like, I'd like to have them on the show to talk about this too. It's they say many people irrelevant. Like VPNs, that's a great way to put it. They're irrelevant for you not getting hacked. They're not going to protect you from getting hacked. They're very irrelevant. Just use a proxy server, which is free, or just use Tor, which is free. There we go. VPN alternatives. Tor. It's like a super proxy. Like, it's just slow, but it's like a very, I mean, that's what people use in their authoritarian countries to try to evade, stuff. So well audited, there's still a tax on it like anything else, but it's free. You don't need to pay for a monthly thing. Proxies. If you just want to hide your IP address, just use a proxy server. Just use Tor. If you just Google for free proxy server, this one came up, and I think it's pretty good. God, go away. I don't care. And they list you how to do this. If you want to look at you can install Foxy Proxy or some other extension to use the proxy server to make it really easy, or you can use it by default. The browser has all this stuff that makes it easy too. But these are all free proxy servers you can use to hide your IP address. So if your reason for keeping your VPN subscription is I like to hide my IP address, this is a free solution right here. Use proxy servers or use Tor. Go to, what is it? Tor.onion, or let's see, I'll just type in Tor. Yeah, torproject.org. Free. Just hide your IP address for free. Is it slower than VPNs? Maybe. I would say that some of these proxy servers can probably compete with it though. Might be able to. Different countries. You want to come from France? Boom. There you go. There's your French one. And then let's see. Mozilla had an article. I'll wrap up with here in a second with this. Yeah, it's another great article. Why should you post this in here? Should you choose a VPN or secure proxy? It's like this shows you, like a lot of times how VPNs are irrelevant for a lot of stuff that you actually think they're doing or want them to do. So Mozilla has a product that does this too. There's a Chrome extension that makes it easy. Yep, Proxy Switchy Omega. They have Foxy Proxy on Firefox too. So yeah, you don't need to use VPNs to have privacy. Use Tor, use a proxy server for free. You don't need to install another antivirus. That's another thing too. Antiviruses just you already if you use Windows, you already have one built in. It's called Windows Defender. Does a great job. You don't need anything else. Everything else is going to take up more CPU power. It's going to add more attack surface because they have all these advanced features that you don't really need. Windows Defender, you know, there's a lot of smart people at Microsoft that produce a great antivirus for the last 10 years. And it's built in. You don't have to worry about it. Just use that. And on Mac, they have a lot of cool security features. And there's basically, you know, very, very little low amount of viruses or malware that's even targeting Mac. So again, you're less targeted if you use a Mac. And Linux, yeah, malware and stuff it's not really a thing nearly as much because the market share, right? Everything's about market share. Windows, 99% of people use Windows. 99% of malware targets Windows. 1% of people use Mac. 1% of malware targets Mac. Don't want to be a target? Use Mac. Yeah, there's even examples of antiviruses getting exploited too. So I talked about adding attack surface. You're adding more complex software that's parsing every kind of file that can come across your computer. It's bound to have security vulnerabilities. Like antiviruses have security vulnerabilities. They do. And here's one that's literally like, you know, it's a couple years old, but Bitdefender had one that was RCE, like critical vulnerability. You go to any website and you're running Bitdefender, you know, a certain version, they could compromise your computer. You don't need to install antiviruses. Like if you're running Windows, my native security advice would be don't install any other antivirus. Just use Windows Defender, make sure it's up to date and stuff, which they do a pretty good job of forcing updates anyways these days. And you don't need a VPN. Just use Tor, just use a proxy. There's your security alpha from someone who, yeah, I'm very confident in my advice. I'll say that. I have lots of experience. Yeah, I have nothing against VPNs. I just think if you use them at home, I don't get why. If you use them for traveling, censorship resistance, whatever, cool. If you use them for working from home, totally makes sense. If you use them at home to protect yourself from IP, in my opinion, you're just wasting your money. Yeah, using a Russian IP address might be, yeah, I don't, these days, maybe, I guess so. But yeah, you don't have to use a Russian one. There's plenty of other ones. Twitter. Yeah, just at me. If I'm off, I'll follow you. You have to go too, so you can DM me. But I appreciate it. Yeah, drop that in, and I'll enable that soon. Quick education, IP flush. Yeah, so the IP config is just it looks at your networking adapters and lets you do certain things on that. So you can set your IP address. You can turn on DHCP. You can do different stuff. If you do ipconfig/flush, no space in between, I think that's the command on Windows, then it basically just flushes your network settings. And if you do ipconfig/renew, I haven't did this for a long time because I don't use Windows very rarely. I use Windows these days, but I did it for over a decade, so I remember some of this stuff. ipconfig/renew will try to get your network adapter back, basically reset everything. If you're using DHCP to get an IP address, which is like auto config IP address, there's some server that's giving you one, your router probably, it'll give you one back. Or if you set your IP up statically, it'll give you that back, things like that. So it's just a networking command that lets you reset your networking settings and adapter and stuff. Yeah, good question. All right, everyone, 100% uptime coming up soon. I'm going to take a quick break, and we will be back shortly with our surprise guest. Should be a lot of fun. Let me drop the link let me stop sharing here. And I will drop the link in the chat. Unless you guys already seen on Twitter. You might have seen on Twitter too. I'll drop it in there. Yep. Scheduled that tweet. Yeah, come join us soon. And I'll be back in just a few minutes. And we'll get started on 100% uptime. Thank you very much for joining me. if you're watching a replay, appreciate you coming by and learning some stuff with me. And if you have any other questions, security AMA stuff, wait till the next one, or post it in the comments. If I can get to it, I will. So until yes, sir. Crypto's fun right now. Security stuff too. Yeah. RHMax. I like it, man. Like snacks. Might have to grab a snack in a minute too. All right, everyone. We are out and back in a moment.